Hello, welcome to preparing for university applications. I'm gonna be really honest, I'm a little nervous, mainly because I do my best in public speaking when I can see faces. And today, I'm talking to you through a camera. So please cheer me on as you are at home or maybe sitting on your computer finishing up the day for students. All right, today as we move through our presentation, I am a big visual learner, and so I have some slides that I'm going to be presenting. And one thing I want you to make note of is the puzzle that is a big theme throughout. And that's because there's so many different pieces to what we're going to talk about that seem kind of like disconnected, but at some point they are going to come together to create your college application. And so you'll see that kind of build throughout. I'm gonna also let you know a little secret about myself. I am from America, where we use the word college to mean anything pretty much after high school. We are talking about universities, we're talking about art schools, trade schools, we're talking about community colleges. We use the word college. It's a little bit of slang, so there you go, you learned something today. If you hear me say college, please just automatically translate that into your brain to mean university, very much the way I do when I speak to an Australian and they tell me about their time in uni. I'm like, uni? Oh, university. So, my name is Melisa Hall, and I have been with BICE since August of 2009. During that time, I have taught photography and I have taught yearbook, which is a graphic design and journalism course. And guys, this was a really cool one. I got to be the building sub for a number of years, the building substitute teacher. I would go into classes and fill in for other teachers when they were absent or sick. And because of that, I got to see two really cool things that I think are super beneficial to my role today. Number one, I got to see our seniors as like second graders, and I've watched them grow. And I think that's really cool when I think about who they were and who they've become. And number two, I get to see what happens inside these classrooms. Guys, this is a really cool education that these students are receiving. And I so many times find myself wishing, man, I wish I had gone to a school like BICE. So yeah, those are some things that really lead into my role as guidance counselor, which I began in 2017. And this is gonna be my 5th class that I'm working with. I love this role. I love working with students in this process as they are learning to define themselves in paper, as they're deciding which schools they want to go to or which countries they want to apply to. This is just a really great opportunity for me to get to know them even better. So I want to share with you a little bit of my philosophy about the guidance counselor role before we really dive in today. Number one, every student is different, and their process to university is going to be different too. They have different interests, they have different academic abilities, they have different backgrounds. So keep that in mind. A lot of times we say, oh, this worked for my friend's kid, XYZ, but it's different today than it was for your friend's kid. So be aware of that. Some of those differences may even be things that are out of your control. The university that they're applying to has different students applying, and that's gonna matter who they're going up against in admissions. Maybe they have a different admissions counseling team that is looking over all of these applications. That's gonna affect results. So keep that in mind as you're working with your student. Definitely listen to people, listen to their experiences, listen to their children's experiences. Take that in and evaluate it. But keep in mind that your student is different. And that is the beauty of who we are. Some other things that I think are really valuable for students during the application process are the skills they learn. They learn to communicate with strangers, whether it's at a college fair or through email as they're asking questions. They learn to fill out applications. Guys, sometimes we forget the applications we fill out for a passport, a job. What about a visa into a new country? Or taxes. I just did mine. It's on my mind. So there's a lot of really valuable skills that they're going to be learning in this process, and I ask that when it's your students' time to apply to school, sit with them, help them. I'm going to do the same, but have them do it. All right, today's purpose. We're going to try and cover 3 things. We're going to try and cover academics, testing, and extracurricular. I've chosen to focus on those 2 last ones because we have PSAT coming up, and extracurricular because it's taken a pretty hard hit during the pandemic, and we need to kind of talk about that. So before we dive into what each grade is got the ability to do or participate in, let's talk about what universities are looking for. They're going to be looking at the GPA, and that is the culmination of daily choices, what a student has done in grades 9 through 12. So be aware of that. We prepare a transcript that displays all of the courses that the student has taken through BICE between grades 9 through 12 and also their grades. And so the university is really going to be looking that over. That's really important, those daily choices. And I like to say it that way because sometimes we have bad days and that's okay. But if we have a lot of bad days in a row, we need to make some adjustments. They're also going to be looking at writing samples. Every school is going to be a little different, so we're doing a generic idea of what schools are looking for. Writing samples are your ability to use the English language to communicate thoughts, ideas, and expressions. They're going to want to also get to know you through this, so they're going to ask you some questions. So start thinking about that. Test scores. Guys, this is a big category, and there's so many different pieces to keep in mind for this, and it depends on which country you're applying to, and it depends on what you want to focus on and study. So I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of a broad view here. There's the SAT, which I think is the most popular or the most famous. Then there's the ACT, which is also quite popular and famous. It's actually the one that I took to get into university. There's AP scores that you will be taking in high school that you may need to submit. And because English maybe is not your first language, you may need to show your English proficiency. And that will come in the form of a TOEFL test or an IELTS test or a Duolingo. Now, a lot of times when students attend BICE for all 4 years of high school, the universities waive that. But I think because of the pandemic, we're seeing a change in that. They're wanting to see test scores in English proficiency, also because they're not seeing SAT or ACT test scores. So sometimes we trade one thing for another thing, so just be prepared, which is why we're talking about this today. I'm trying to prepare you for what might be. Interests and passions. They want to know that you have interests and things that excite you. And then your recommendation letters. So really quick, we're gonna go back to interests and passions. That's like what you do outside of school. Maybe it's karate, maybe it's basketball, maybe it's knitting or photography. It can be anything, serving the community. Maybe you love going to the old folks' home and playing cards with the ladies there to just serve. Okay, those recommendation letters. That is your daily engagement in the classroom. That's a letter written by your teacher that's going to say, yeah, this teacher or this student made my class so much more interesting by discussion or was really good at organization. So those are some things to kind of keep in mind as you're working. Those recommendation letters are not the most important thing, but they are valuable. Okay, so we've talked about what universities want. So let's now go ahead and think about when we start building this. Well, as 8th graders, it doesn't really appear on your transcript, so you're like, Sweet, I can breathe easy. But this is where we want to start focusing on building good school habits. And especially while we're working at home right now online, that means creating a good space for learning. As I talk with my students, I'm reminding them to get out of the bed, to sit at a table, and sometimes it's best to sit in a shared space because that accountability of your parents watching you or a sibling watching you makes you try harder. And I love that accountability that gives. Some other things that we should be doing is learning some organizational habits. Especially now that we're so online, we have to organize ourselves both physically and digitally. And so learning how to organize our Google Drive. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still working on it, but I love changing the colors on my folders. It makes me happy. We also want students to be learning their responsibilities. What are they responsible for in class? And so that's part of those good study or school habits that we want them to be thinking about. Consider taking the PSAT for 8th grade or 9th grade. It's actually the same test, and it is on an 8th grade, 9th grade level. So don't worry, 8th graders. I mean, it's gonna be challenging because it's a test, and you don't know what it's gonna cover until you walk in. But I do recommend taking that, at least 8th or 9th grade. And then, you guys are gonna hear me say this a lot, get involved in the community. Join a sport, join the endurance running team. Do something to grow your skills. I want to take a moment and just tell you about a student at Bice that has impressed me. When he was in 5th grade, he wanted to start helping out in the sound room, and so he did. This student slowly has grown in his ability to run the soundboard, to run the technical things that is even making today happen. Running the lights, figuring it out. Years later, he now knows that this is what he wants to study when he goes to university. And he is researching and looking up sound engineering schools. And I love that after-school activity, that community service, has turned into what he wants to pursue in his career. And so that's why we do some of these extra things, is because we either weed out what we don't want to be, or we quickly decide, I have a passion for this. I like this. And that's what we want to be giving our students. So sometimes students don't want to do these after-school activities. Maybe they don't want to learn a foreign language or learn how to play an instrument, but let's push them a little bit in that area. All right, in 9th grade, guys, 9th grade, that's where we really start tracking our grades. This is a harder transition as you are all of a sudden taking more and more responsibility for yourself. So we're continuing to build those good school habits. We're continuing to learn from our mistakes, and we're evaluating what worked when we studied and what we need to adjust. Something else to think about in 9th grade is, based on your study habits, are you prepared to take an AP course in 10th grade? And that's one thing that's really great about 9th grade, is you're using that time to really figure out what's working and what's not. Just in case you don't know AP classes, that's the advanced placement classes that are offered by College Board, which are the same people that offer the SAT test for college admissions. It is a worldwide recognized exam that happens in May. And so the students are on campus learning from teachers to prepare for that test in May. One thing I will say about college admissions is some countries require an AP score to get into their university, and other schools will give you credit towards a class if you have a decent AP score. So there's benefits to taking those depending on where you're going. So be aware of that. And I'm gonna say it again, get involved in after-school activities. Try something new. You never know, you just never know. All right, 10th grade. 10th grade, you have established your good school habits. You are taking ownership and you are learning to advocate for yourself. Guys, what does that mean? That means maybe you didn't do as well on assessments that you wanted to do. And so you seek out your teacher and you say, I would really like to take this again. Can I redo my assessment? not only are you going to pursue retaking that assessment, but you're also going to take a time or ask for when can I do that assignment, not just saying, hey, I want to do that and waiting for the teacher to follow up on with you. This is you taking ownership of your education. Consider taking the PSAT. Attend college fairs. I'm going to say this again. I know I said it earlier. We have one coming up on Monday, March 7th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I know that's early, students, but that's because schools in North America are joining at their 8 to 10 p.m. or maybe later. So just be aware of that. Also, schools in Europe, ooh, that's going to be late for them. Ooh, let's make sure they feel welcome and wanted. I also recommend summer programs between 9th and 10th grade or between 10th and 11th grade. I want to brag on a few other students that have participated in summer programs. We had 2 young ladies last summer take part in a journalism summer program, and they were very excited and impassioned by what they learned, and they've come back to our school community and started the Bice Times. The cool thing about that is, guys, there are so many people that are participating in the Bice Times that their excitement from their summer program is catching on to other students, and they're making this community better. That's what universities are looking for. They're looking for how are you going to make their community better, and that is a perfect example of how that in work. Get involved in after-school activities. I'm not gonna lie, I put that on every slide because I really think it's important right now in the pandemic. It's so easy for us to just go home, to isolate, to not get involved. But even if you're choosing to isolate, there's so many online options. Please do it, please do it. All right, in 11th grade, we're no longer building, we're no longer establishing, but students own their education. They are organizing themselves, they are advocating for themselves, they are doing a lot of those things that we want to see a student or an adult do, obviously with supervision as we come alongside them. Now, during the first semester of the junior year, a student will take, at Bice, will take the PSAT. Okay, this is a lot of initials, hold up. The PSAT NMSQT stands for the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. That's something that we at Bice want to provide for our students. And so every 11th grader at Bice will take it. Whereas the other PSATs were optional, this one is not. That happens first semester, usually in October. And I want students to have that one last experience of what that testing room can look like before they begin registering and taking the SAT or ACT. So just be aware, second semester of 11th grade is what I like to refer to as that sweet spot. It's usually where we see some of the highest SAT scores for a student, so just be aware of that. This is also a really good time to commit to your interests and passions. It doesn't mean you can't try new things later. It's just sometimes we are really finalizing. Maybe I didn't like playing the violin. Actually, that's a true story. I played the violin. I didn't like playing it. But that's when I got into photography. And look what photography has done. I'm teaching photography in a foreign country now. And so that has opened up a door. We're also going to be making plans for where we want to apply, what credits look good or school classes look good on my application. What do I need for admissions? So start making that plan for your university or college applications. And then something that I would recommend for parents to do with their students is campus tours. And I know not all of us can travel, but you can do online tours. So many universities have done these 3D tours of their campus. And it's a really great way to kind of, hey, that looks really like a cool place. I am interested in knowing more. I think I'm going to use the skills that I've been learning to reach out and to ask that school representative of some more questions about admissions. And I know some students are nervous about sending those emails, just hi. So we'll proof it for them, don't worry. And I do that pretty regularly for our seniors and our juniors as they're reaching out to universities. I do proof those emails, but I do think it looks really good for students to do that. All right, So to recap, what's important in a university application? Well, there's no better way to say it than a well-rounded student. A student that has tried new things, a student that knows what they're interested in, a student that has worked hard in the classes that they have taken, a student that has engaged in the classroom, in activities, and maybe even community service. So those are some things that I would really recommend for any student and parent. And sometimes parents, we do need to push our students a little bit and encourage them to do things they don't like to do, because let's be honest, sometimes we all like to be a little lazy, but that's not how we improve. We always want to be growing, we always want to be learning, and that's something that I apply in my own personal life. I'm constantly trying to find new things to learn. So I encourage you and your student to do that. Okay, so that was the very quick overview of what I'm sure you guys have so many questions about. And so I would really like to talk today about some general questions that can be overarching for all students. We can talk specifics more one-on-one, and by that I mean a parent, a student, and me. I really think that it should always be that way, or a student and me. I don't think that parents should be meeting with just me, because your student also needs to be part of the plan. It's their lives. All right, so our first question we have is, why is the PSAT important? Okay, this is really good. And I have been answering this question to a couple of parents that have asked, why should my kid take the 8th grade PSAT? Well, at BICE, we don't have any of those really strict testing environments. We do a lot of our testing or our assessments on a computer. And right now, those tests are still paper in some cases. And so students are still learning how to fill in the bubble, to write block letters, to listen to verbal instructions. And especially in our second language community, sometimes that's really hard. Students do their best when they visually see instructions. And so this is an opportunity for students to hear instructions, to learn. A few other things to keep in mind is the PSAT will cost you between 300 and 400,000 rupiah, whereas the SAT will cost you between about 1.5 juta, and I'm just kind of quickly doing quick conversions. So obviously, we don't want a student to have no idea of what the SAT is going to be like, how to fill in those bubbles, what the room's going to be like, putting my pencil down when they call time, things of that nature. I would rather a student learn that in an area that they already feel comfortable in for a price of a test that's not as high. So let's kind of say that. It's also really handy because when you get your PSAT score back, Khan Academy has connected with College Board, and so they can make an individualized learning plan for you to improve some of those weaker areas. Maybe it'll show up that your algebra foundation is a little low, which will affect a lot of other things, and so they can connect you with a Khan Academy learning plan. One last thought that I had, oh yes, PSAT scores can sometimes point out what your AP potential is. Like currently you are on target to take this AP class. You should be successful in that AP class. And so sometimes that's really beneficial to know. All right, next question. Is community service important? Yes, I think it is very important. It is good to know about the world that we live in. And a lot of times when we live in this bubble of an international school, of our church, and we don't get out of our bubble, we don't really know the world that we live in. And so community service really opens up that world to us, maybe allowing us to, number one, be thankful for what we have, and number two, to slowly make the world a better place. And I do think it looks incredibly good on university applications. Please do not kill yourself serving the community, but find simple ways to slowly build that. Once again, I want to remind you of that 5th grader that learned sound and is now serving his church community running sound also. So it creates passions that we can do in our normal lives too, that make the world we're part of better. All right, any other questions? Ooh, do admissions officers look at an applicant's social media? Yes. I feel like in our community, our social media is pretty well, we live pretty wholesome lives, let me put it that way. But yeah, they do look at social media. We have had a university representative come to campus. This was a few years back when we could travel. And he told us it's a Christian school. And so we do check your social media. And he said that there was students that they actually turned away from admissions, not because of their academics, but because of what they were posting on social media. So let's be wise with what we post, and that can go with what we're doing, and that can go also with some ideas that we post. It's just kind of a scary area sometimes on social media, what people post or repost, especially when I think about political ideas. But that is to be taken into consideration, and universities may look at that. That is a great question. So keep that in mind. All right. I will say that one thing that I really enjoy doing with the students, both juniors and seniors, as I start meeting with them a little bit more regularly in their process of applying, is praying for them. A lot of times during those prayer requests, we hear the concerns that they have, or the nervousness that they may feel in waiting for their results to come out. And it's just really good to pray with the students and remind them that we serve this really big God, and God is in control of everything. And I strongly believe that, because I have to tell you, if I planned my life out when I was 17 years old, it would look very different than what it does today. And I am quite happy with my life. So I like to remind the students that we're gonna do our best. We are gonna prepare for everything, but we're gonna trust. We're gonna trust the creator of the universe to provide what we need. Okay, based on current SAT, ACT test optional trend, do you think colleges really consider SAT, ACT optional when they say so, or are they just saying it? You know, this is a really good question, and I'm not gonna lie, I have thought about this a lot. I do think that if you do not submit an SAT or ACT score, they are gonna look very closely at that writing sample. They're gonna look really closely at your transcript. They're also going to look very closely at your letters of recommendation. That's my opinion. Based on everything they tell me, they're accepting students test optional. And to be honest, for some students, this is a real win. Give me a essay any day over a multiple choice test, and I am there for it. So this personally would have been fantastic for me as a high school student. I would have loved to have lived through the test optional time, because I remember getting up really early that Saturday morning and driving across town to go take my ACT test, and whew, it was stressful. So evaluate, talk with your student. Are you a good test taker? Then take the test. In fact, I encourage all students to take the test, and it's up to them on whether or not they want to submit the score. It's better to have everything prepared that could possibly come up versus not having it prepared. And so that's the other reason why I wanted to talk with you guys today. So just to recap my answer on that question, they say they are not really considering the SAT and ACT as like if you don't submit that, they're not gonna deny you for that reason. So it'll be for other reasons that they maybe consider you or not consider you. Yep. All right, any last questions? Okay. I wanna thank you for your time. I wanna thank you for your investment in your student. I want to thank you for your investment in us as your students' educators. Your words are so good. Whether encouragement or constructive criticism, we all need it. And so just like we offer it to students, I want to thank you for what you're offering to your students and what you offer to us. I am beyond thankful to be part of this community and to be working with your students. Please remember, if you have any specific follow-up questions, my email address is melisahall@bicdu.org. Please reach out. Thank you and have a great afternoon.